Yo guys, what is going on? It is Invin here, and today what I'm bringing to you guys is the part 2 of the patch notes for the January release notes. This is kind of stuff that is in the PTR right now, and these are some huge changes that are going to be coming our way very, very shortly. Now, this is really important. It's going to cover pretty much everything, but I'm going to do a quick summary of it so you don't have to read every single nuance. It just gives you a rough idea of what to expect, as well as I'm going to highlight some of the most important key features of this. And of course, this will be linked in the description below, should you want to read through it, in its entirety at your own pace as well. Now, before we jump into today's video, if you haven't done so already, please do make sure that you subscribe to the channel. We're pushing eagerly close to 13,000. So if you guys could help support me get there, that would be absolutely amazing. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So, first thing here. World experience. You've got new fast travel points to every single expedition entrance across the game. My opinion, this is a really good thing, and I do kind of wish going back we'd had this from the start. It would have been much easier, but finally that has come in, and the first thing that this screams out to me is, of course, potentially we could be seeing mutations for the other dungeons in the future. Otherwise, there wouldn't really be a need for those, particularly for most of the endgame players, to go back any further than Dynasty Shipyard, which of course is a mutated one as well. So for me, that's quite exciting news. That does look like we might see the expansion of mutations into all of the current expeditions, which would be really cool. So we'll have to wait and see with that one, but that is something exciting in my opinion there. Now, we've also seen some fixes here, basically to do with the mutations. Festering was allowing players to get healed. That is one of the curses you get when you get up to the highest levels, and basically it doesn't allow you to be healed. There's one here that I wanted to point out. Fixed an issue where a negative mutator score appears to grant positive mutator ranking. Whoever had to report that one, I'm sorry for you. Whoever died that many times that it's gone to negative, that's pretty rough. I don't know if it's easy to do, but it seems like quite hard, so that's a shame. Also, you've got some AI, do not gain the benefits of the empowered buff, etc., not counting towards the score. All of that has been fixed, so essentially now you will get rewarded for any kills that you get in these expeditions, of course, because that does go towards your total score, which is really good, and kind of just general fixes and such going on there. Then what we've seen is some combat changes. Mainly this is going to be to the OPR, or Outpost Rush game mode, which we did talk about a lot of these previous time that I mentioned in the patch 1 notes. But again, just to recap, you've got an increase of 250 Azov to the Brute tokens. They're now droppable on death, and all summoning tokens, including Brute tokens, will have a rarity associated, so that when those bags are dropped upon death, people will be able to see them and play from that, whether they want to pick it up, fight to defend it, etc. And then you'll be able to see that a lot easier on the floor. Also, with Outpost Rush, you've got Baroness Hale's Ice Mines now slow instead of stagger the player, which is a lot better. And they've also added 2 additional side gates to each of the spawns to help us get less spawn capped, which is very good, because there was just one main door where everybody was sitting and coming from, and now you've got 2 side doors as well, so you're not going to be able to be trapped in as much, which is really good. Notable fixes then. This is kind of important again, because this is following on from the combat thing. Essentially, Bow Concussion Ultimate was applying to all attacks and not just headshots. That's been fixed. We've also fixed Mending Protection. This is an important one for anybody that does use this ability. Essentially, they've updated Mending Protection to be able to reapply by any Orb of Protection heal, even the recovery from Protector's Blessing. To compensate from that, the duration has been shortened and the effect has been reduced. So previously, it was a 5 to 40% heal for 5 seconds that only applied while the ability was initially used. Now it is 5 to 25% for 3 seconds, but that duration can be refreshed with each tick of recovery and additional uses of Orb of Protection. So essentially just made it a little bit more utility based, a little bit more like a prolonged heal rather than an instant burst. But that, in my opinion, does make sense, and I think that does make it just as good. Now, as well, what we're looking at here is a Reap fix. So for those of you that were looking at when you had Reap and it wasn't doing damage when you had Collector modifier and Gravity passive, it now does do damage, which is good. And some big things here with the Void Gauntlet, where in the PTR, basically the Void Gauntlet's cooldown reduction was being triggered by dot effects. That has now been fixed as well, and fixed to permanent disease and slow being applied in PvP. That is a massive one. It was happening quite a lot in wars, so thankfully that has now been fixed. Now, this is a really important one. We've seen here an Endgame update part 2. So similarly to yesterday's video where I said that the devs have confirmed we will be getting a 590 plus ability to upgrade to 625. So you'll be able to get an item from 500 or 590, sorry, all the way up to 600, and then you'll be able to get that 600 item once you have the expertise as well, up to 625. But in order to upgrade at any item from 590 plus, you will still need to get the expertise to 600 first, which is going to be the new cap once this update releases. Now, that's important preface for this point, because it says we have addressed an issue where gypsum casts were only providing +1 bonuses when opening above gear score of 585 for an item. Now, upgrades from gypsum casts from 585 to 600 should be at least +2, except when the expertise is 599, of course, which would just be a +1. Now, this is really, really good. Obviously, it means we're going to get that progression faster, and it means at the most you will need 5 or 6 gypsum casts in order to be able to get up to the 600 gear score once this update does go live. Not seeing anything addressed here about potentially some of the times where it has minus people's gear score, so hopefully that's just kind of been fixed in the background and they've null and voided that particular bug. But this is really important as well. If I just flick onto the next page for you guys, which is actually a response from the devs in using gypsum to go from 590 to 600 after patch. Someone asked if stockpiling was a good idea, and for this, as you can see, Zin has responded to this saying that gypsum casts will be a guaranteed method to get your expertise bumps from 590 to 600 once the patch goes live. So if you are already capped at 590 in all slots already, saving casts until the patch drops is the best use for them. Now, following from that, I would say as well, keeping at least 5 or 6 armor casts for each thing. Get them stockpiled ahead of this update so that you're ready and willing to go as soon as it drops. And of course, your main 2 weapons or main 2/3 weapons. Of course, try and get your jewelry and all your other weapons up once you've got those reserved. But for me personally, I'm going to be reserving casts before I finish getting everything to 590, just because that will mean as soon as this drops, I'll be able to start working on my gear up to 625, which I know from a fact from playing the PTR is going to be a massive, massive difference. Now, as a side note here, New World responded to my tweet about yesterday's video on Twitter, saying to keep up to date with this thread is a good opportunity to ask questions, find out info, and lo and behold, a few hours ago, again, Zin has posted something else very, very useful that follows on from this with the new Umbral system, which is a response to a comment I wonder about the upgrade of item 599 to 600. Is it going to give the +1 attribute point or just upgrade to perk values when we reach 625? Now, Zin's response to this was, yes, attribute bonus and perks scale based on gear score. So increasing the gear score from 599 to 600 will get you that +25 for armor and +30 for weapons. And what he's referencing there is obviously the attributes. You will get all the maximum up. So even if you've got an item right now, so particularly you've got some good items in the range of 590 to 599, not quite that 600, 2 good perks on, you may be thinking you want to try and get the best in slots. Obviously, you want to keep pushing for that for the extra perk, but what this is telling us is that the gear score is based on the stat boosting. So as you do get that to 600, when you have upgraded them from 590 plus, then you will actually get access to that 25th or 30th perk, depending on whether it's armor or weapons, meaning that you'll be at no disadvantage for using an epic, other than, of course, not having the 3rd perk access, which is really, really good. So back into these patch 2 notes then, really importantly, housing tax has been reverted back to the maximum, but we've had some changes here, so it'll be reverted from 90% reduction, so it'll go back up to the big prices. But what they've done is updated the housing tax minimum band to 2.5, down from 5%, so it can now be cheaper. They've also updated housing tax maximum band from 10% down from 20%, so the max it can be is 10%, and they've updated default to 5%. Now, for me personally, I would have liked to see there be an overall decrease in the housing tax value, because this does still mean that some places, particularly now we've got used to the housing tax being lower, people have bought houses in places they maybe wouldn't have done, are still going to put it up to that full 10%, but at least 10% is nowhere near as bad as what it could be. Personally, I think we're going to have it at the minimum, but, you know, every company will do their own thing, so just bear that in mind when this update does go live. Watch your housing taxes, they could shoot up a little bit, but thankfully, because it's been reduced, the maximum being 10%, we're not going to see it go up an awful lot. It's just those tier 4 guys, you might see a bit more of an impact than usual. Also, with aptitude rewards, we've seen a massive reduction to the amount of Azoth vials which you'll receive from these. So if you are somebody who likes to use these a lot, or is using them a lot for crafting, etc., make sure that you keep a load of these from right now. Get as many aptitude rewards as you can, because you can stockpile these pretty quickly, and they are going to be reduced by a significant amount, and they've been removed from tier 1 aptitude gathering chests, but the rest of them are still in just reduced numbers, so you are going to see a lot less often the amounts that you were seeing, because we're getting an extremely high amount right now. And so bear that in mind if you are someone who uses a lot of Azov, stockpile ahead whilst you can, and maybe potentially buy some up if you're going to need to. If you're anything like me, you've got 200-300 sat in your inventory, which you're not even using. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep those for the time being. Also, they fixed some crafting bugs, such as the timeless shard not being consumed when crafting, which is a big one, and also fixed a bug that was preventing players from crafting gear score 600 Arcana using winter patterns. That's now been fixed. You guys can do all of that stuff. Also, gear and loot, this is really important. Fixed an issue where certain 600 gear score named items were increasing your expertise, okay, but this one is really important for a lot of the players that use bow. Fixed an issue where the Lazarus bow had less dexterity than other bows at its tier and gear score. It now has equivalent amount of dexterity, which means that this bow is actually pretty good now, and of course is a viable thing to use as a drop if you do manage to get it, which is really important because for a long while people were just ignoring it and not hoping to get it because it wasn't very good. Now it at least matches with the attributes, so you can try and get your hands and test that one out. Now also for any of my mid-game players, those of you that are new to the game or you've been leveling very slowly, they've sped up the leveling for mid-game levels 23 to 45 by about 20%. So people have now going to have an easier time getting up there to the later levels in the game, and of course just completing some of those quests early doors when it can be a little bit tricky if you don't have group or friends to play with alongside you, which is really good. Massive thing here, guys, for everybody is that the materials used to craft an expedition keys, such as your chisels, corrupted fragments, shards, crystals, and lodestones, are now tradable. So get clearing those corrupted portals. Make sure you've got a stockpile of these so that you can make your own keys. Also be aware they're probably going to sell for quite a lot when this does happen. Stockpile any chisels you can before this update comes out, if you know that you're going to get back up to max on your faction points before then, because obviously you want to buy your mutator keys. Bear in mind they are limited to 1 per week, so you'll only need 10k points per week, so you can use the rest to maybe get these chisels, create some keys, or flip them for a good bit of money. Your choice, but just bear that in mind. Everybody, those can now be crafted and traded, etc., which is really good. Also, not currently in the PTR, but when this does come out, to keep the parity with the expedition mutated orbs, normal expedition tuning orbs for Dynasty, Genesis, and Lazarus have all been added to the faction shops and can be purchased once per week each as well. So if you are trying to get some of those normal or regular dungeon runs done, or expedition runs done, then you can go ahead and buy some of those keys as well. I would expect that they're going to be less expensive than the mutated ones, but they are still on a weekly lockout for the purchase, so make sure you're getting your hands on those if you do want to grab some of them as well. And they have also reduced the cost of all inventory items taking durability damage on death. We made the change so that only bound items will take durability damage on death. This is absolutely huge if you're holding items to sell, holding items that you've crafted for somebody else. As long as it isn't bound to you, it will no longer take inventory damage or durability damage whilst in your inventory if you do happen to die, which is a massive change and a really good change in my opinion. So bear that in mind. You can now start to keep stuff on you to use yourself as almost a second bank, for those of you that, like me, are filling up in pretty much every location. And of course, on the PTR, a cooldown was accidentally applied to the Covenant faction shop's chunk of consecrated iron instead of mutated tuning orb. That's been corrected, just a little fix there for anybody playing the PTR as well. And then finally here, just in the last bit of notable fixes, the most important one to point out here is that the corrupted breaches icons should now correctly appear on the map, so we can actually see where these are at any given time. And you're also going to see that the upcoming wars and invasions are actually more accurate now. Sometimes it says an upcoming invasion, doesn't show for a couple of days, etc. They should now be accurate and at least telling us when they are going to be. So that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Hopefully you have enjoyed, found this useful and informative, keeping you up to date with all of the latest news and info. Like I mentioned at the start of today's video, if you are new to this channel, please do make sure that you drop in a subscribe down below, as it is much appreciated. And if you found today's video useful, please do drop me a like as well, as it really does help to support me and my content here on YouTube. Other than that, guys, if you want to follow me over on Twitter, the links for that will be in the description, along with my Twitch link as well, if you do want to join in with some of the live action we've got going on over there. We're live most days at the moment and it's been good fun, so make sure you do get involved with that as well. Other than that, that is going to be it for today's video, and I will catch you guys again tomorrow with another upload. Take care, guys, and peace.